Captain Zexhar adjusted his mandibles nervously as he entered the War Council chamber aboard the Galactic Alliance flagship Eternal Harmony. The massive holographic display at the center of the room flickered to life, casting eerie blue light across the assembled faces of various alien species. Representatives from 12 different civilizations sat in a perfect circle, their varied forms creating a rainbow of colors, textures, and biological impossibilities. The Vorthak delegation twitched their tentacles in anxiety. The crystalline Zelnari hummed in frequencies that made nearby equipment vibrate. Even the normally stoic Karath shifted their armored plates with barely contained worry. Something had shaken the entire galactic community, and Captain Zexhar was about to find out what. "Begin the briefing," commanded Admiral Thrello S.A., her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Her species, the Manthari, had led the Galactic Alliance for over 3,000 years. They were known for their calm wisdom and strategic brilliance. Today, she looked anything but calm. The holographic display shifted, revealing what appeared to be battlefield footage. The image quality was grainy, typical of combat recorders operating under extreme conditions. Smoke and debris filled the frame, but, gradually, the scene became clearer. This footage was recovered from the battlefield on Kepler 442b, announced intelligence officer Nytchala, her voice carrying the melodic tone of her aquatic species. The planet was under siege by the Void Hunters for approximately 47 standard days before this recording was made. Captain Zexhar leaned forward in his chair. The Void Hunters were the stuff of nightmares. They had appeared from the dark spaces between galaxies 50 years ago, consuming everything in their path. No negotiation was possible. No mercy was shown. They simply devoured worlds, leaving nothing but empty husks floating in space. The footage showed a massive battlefield. Void Hunter ships, each one a twisted amalgamation of living tissue and dark metal, filled the sky like a plague of locusts. Their ground forces swarmed across the landscape, overwhelming the Alliance defensive positions one by one. The defenders fought valiantly, but it was clear they were losing. Standard Alliance protocols were followed, and Nytchala continued. Evacuation procedures, scorched earth tactics, everything by the manual. But then, something unexpected happened. The camera angle shifted as whoever was recording moved to a new position. In the distance, a single figure could be seen walking across the battlefield. Not running, not seeking cover, just walking with casual confidence through the chaos of war. "Enhance Section 7 Alpha," ordered Admiral Thrello S.A. The image zoomed in, and gasps echoed around the chamber. The figure was humanoid, but unlike any species in the Alliance database. It stood upright on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and appeared to be wearing some form of primitive armor. Most shocking of all, it seemed completely unconcerned by the hell raging around it. "Is that a human?" whispered Counselor Vextar from the Hegemony delegation. His species had only recently joined the Alliance after centuries of isolation. "Impossible," replied Dr. Yilmoth, the Alliance's chief xenobiologist. "Humans are a myth. A legend told by spacers in frontier taverns. There's no scientific evidence they ever existed." The figure in the footage continued walking. Void Hunter warriors charged at it from multiple directions. What happened next defied explanation. The human moved with fluid grace, each motion perfectly calculated. Void Hunters fell around it like wheat before a scythe. The creature's weapons were simple, almost primitive compared to Alliance technology, yet devastatingly effective. Captain Zexhar watched in fascination as the human cleared a path through enemy forces that had been considered unstoppable. The Void Hunters, known for their relentless aggression, actually began retreating from this single figure. "Continue the playback," Admiral Thrello S.A. commanded, though her voice now carried a note of uncertainty. The footage jumped forward several hours. The human had somehow reached the primary Void Hunter command structure, a massive biomechanical tower that served as their local headquarters. Alliance forces had attempted to breach it 17 times, losing thousands of soldiers in the process. The human walked up to the main entrance and simply knocked. The massive doors, designed to withstand orbital bombardment, opened smoothly. What stepped out was a Void Hunter Prime, one of their supreme commanders. These beings were legendary for their cruelty and tactical genius. This particular prime stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body a nightmare fusion of insect-like chitin, metallic implants, and writhing tentacles. The human and the prime stood facing each other for several moments. No one in the council chamber spoke. The tension in the recorded footage was palpable even through the holographic display. Then, something unprecedented happened. The Void Hunter Prime, this creature that had never shown fear or hesitation in 50 years of galactic conquest, took a step backward. Audio enhancement available, reported NYTHALA. The recording equipment picked up their conversation. Play it, ordered the Admiral. The Prime's voice came through the speakers, translated by the Alliance's Universal Communication Matrix. It spoke in a harsh, guttural language that sounded like metal being ground together. You should not be here. Your kind was removed from this galaxy long ago. The human's response was calm, almost conversational. The voice was deep, measured, and carried an undertone of infinite patience. Removed? That's an interesting word choice. I prefer relocated. The accords were clear. The Prime continued, its voice now carrying a note of what could only be described as panic. Your species agreed to the restrictions. The barriers were established. You cannot be here. The accords, the human repeated thoughtfully. Yes, those were simpler times. Different circumstances. Your kind has grown quite bold in our absence, haven't you? Captain Zexhar noticed that every being in the council chamber was hanging on every word. Whatever this conversation meant, it was clearly significant beyond anything they had imagined. The Prime's body language shifted to what appeared to be a submissive posture. We did not know anyone remained. The monitoring stations reported total compliance with the evacuation protocols. Monitoring stations can be circumvented, the human replied, especially when you want to keep an eye on how your former neighbors are behaving. Please, the Prime said, and the desperation in its voice was unmistakable. We will withdraw from this sector. The Alliance territories will be respected. There need not be any unpleasantness. The human was quiet for several long moments. When it finally spoke, its voice carried a note of disappointment. You've been busy, haven't you? How many worlds? How many civilizations? The expansion was necessary for our survival. The Prime replied quickly. Resources were becoming scarce in our original territories. Resources? The human's voice had grown colder. Is that what you call them? Living beings with their own hopes and dreams. We did not realize the local species were under protection, the Prime said, its words tumbling over each other in haste. Had we known there were still watchers in this region, we would never have watchers. The human interrupted. Haven't heard that term in a while. The footage shifted as whoever was recording moved to get a better angle. The human stepped closer to the Prime, and, despite the massive size difference, the alien creature seemed to shrink back. Here's what's going to happen, the human said, its voice returning to that calm, conversational tone. You're going to recall every ship, every warrior, every scout from Alliance space. You're going to return to your own territories and stay there. You're going to leave these people alone. And if we refuse? The Prime asked, though it sounded like it already knew the answer. The human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Then, I'll have to call my friends. And, believe me, you don't want that. We've been watching you for 50 years now. We've been taking notes. We know exactly how your civilization works, where your weak points are, and how to dismantle it piece by piece. You're bluffing, the Prime said, but its voice lacked conviction. Your species numbered in the millions when the accords were signed. Surely you cannot have enough survivors to threaten the entire Void Hunter Empire. Millions. The human laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both warm and terrifying. Oh, my friend, we numbered in the billions. And the accords didn't relocate all of us. They relocated the ones who were willing to leave. The silence that followed was deafening. Even through the recording, the impact of those words was clear. The ones who stayed, the human continued. Well, let's just say we've had a lot of time to prepare. A lot of time to plan. A lot of time to decide what we would do if someone started threatening our neighbors. The Prime's body language changed completely. It was no longer defensive or submissive. It was terrified. How many of you are there? Enough, the human replied simply. The footage continued for several more minutes, showing the human providing specific coordinates, and withdrawal timelines to the increasingly panicked Void Hunter commander. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the conversation ended. The Prime retreated into its command structure, and, within hours, the entire Void Hunter force had departed the system. As the holographic display faded, the council chamber remained silent. Captain Zexhar looked around at his colleagues, seeing his own confusion and amazement reflected in their faces. Analysis suggests the footage is authentic, Dr. Yilmoth said finally. No signs of manipulation or fabrication. But humans are supposed to be extinct, protested Counselor Vextar. The historical records are clear. They disappeared from known space over 10,000 years ago. Admiral Thrello S.A.'s 4 eyes blinked in contemplation. Perhaps our understanding of disappeared needs revision. Intelligence Officer Nythala activated another display. This is why we called this emergency session. After analyzing this footage, we conducted a search of historical databases across all member civilizations. What we found is disturbing. The new display showed a timeline stretching back millions of years. Highlighted points marked significant events in galactic history. Wars that ended suddenly. Aggressive species that mysteriously changed their expansion policies. Entire civilizations that simply vanished from one day to the next. Every single one of these events, Nythala explained, occurred shortly after reports of human contact. Reports that were dismissed as folklore or misidentification at the time. Captain Zexhar studied the data with growing unease. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Throughout galactic history, whenever a species became too aggressive, too destructive, or too dangerous to their neighbors, humans appeared. Sometimes they negotiated. Sometimes they intervened more directly. And, sometimes, the troublesome species simply ceased to exist. What are you suggesting? Asked Dr. Yilmoth. I'm suggesting, Admiral Thrello S.A. said slowly, that humans never left. They've been here all along, watching, waiting, and intervening when necessary. They've been protecting the galaxy from threats we never even knew existed. The implications of this revelation sent ripples of unease through the chamber. Every species represented in the Alliance had histories, legends, and myths about mysterious guardians or protectors. Stories that had been dismissed as primitive superstition or wishful thinking. If this is true, Counselor Vextar said quietly, then we need to find them. We need to make contact. Do we? Admiral Thrello S.A. asked. If they've been protecting us from the shadows for millennia, perhaps our ignorance was by design. Perhaps they prefer it that way. Captain Zexhar felt a chill run down his spine. The universe had suddenly become a much larger and more complex place. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between stars, an ancient species watched and waited. They had power enough to make the Void Hunters retreat without firing a single shot. They had knowledge accumulated over eons of observation. And they had been judging every species in the galaxy, deciding who deserved protection and who deserved destruction. There's more, Nythala said, her voice barely above a whisper. We found something else in the historical records. References to a human council, a governing body that supposedly makes decisions about galactic affairs. And, according to these ancient texts, they've been planning something. Something big. The chamber fell silent once again. Outside the massive viewing ports, stars twinkled in the endless dark. Each one might harbor human observers, human stations, human fleets. The galaxy that had seemed so familiar just hours before now felt alien and threatening. Admiral Thrello S.A. stood slowly, her decision made. We will convene a full session of the Galactic Council. Every species, every government, every faction needs to know about this. If humans are real, if they've been watching us, then the entire foundation of galactic civilization needs to be re-examined. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Captain Zexhar remained in his seat, staring at the empty holographic display. Somewhere in the depths of space, the human from the footage was continuing whatever mission had brought it to that battlefield. Others like it were stationed throughout the galaxy, silent sentinels maintaining a peace that no one had realized needed maintaining. He wondered what they thought of the Alliance. Did they see them as promising young civilizations worthy of protection, or as potential threats that might need to be eliminated? The answer, he realized with growing dread, might determine the fate of every living being in known space. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days later aboard Station Prime, a massive construct that served as the political heart of the Alliance. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in the Grand Assembly, their varied forms creating a spectacular display of biological diversity. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation and fear. Ambassador Krethan of the Zephyrian Commonwealth arrived early, his crystalline body refracting the station's lights into rainbow patterns. His people were among the oldest in the Alliance, with historical records stretching back over 50,000 years. If anyone had knowledge of ancient humans, it would be them. As delegates took their positions, hushed conversations filled the enormous chamber. Word of the footage had spread quickly through diplomatic channels, despite attempts at secrecy. Everyone wanted answers to questions they had never thought to ask. President Mordax of the Trade Federation was the first to speak when the session officially began. His bulbous head swayed on its long neck as he addressed the assembly. "We demand to see this alleged footage. These claims of living humans are preposterous. Our commercial networks span half the galaxy. We would know if such a species existed." Admiral Threll OSA activated the central display without ceremony. "Then, see for yourself." The footage played in its entirety, from the initial battlefield scenes to the final withdrawal of Void Hunter forces. The chamber fell completely silent as hundreds of beings watched a single human accomplish what entire Alliance fleets had failed to achieve. When the recording ended, the silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Finally, Elder Ythera of the Preservation Collective spoke in her ancient, whispering voice. "We have seen this before." Every eye, sensor, and optical organ in the chamber turned toward her. The Preservation Collective was legendary for their memory. They were living libraries, each individual capable of storing and recalling millions of years of historical data with perfect accuracy. "Speak, Elder," Admiral Threll OSA requested formally. 47,312 years ago, Elder Ythera began, her voice carrying the weight of eons. The Devourer Plague began consuming the Andorian sector. 17 civilizations fell in the first wave. The Alliance of that era was helpless to stop them. Then, reports came of strange warriors appearing on the battlefield. Bipedal beings who fought with primitive weapons, but devastating effectiveness. The plague was stopped within one planetary rotation. She paused, accessing deeper memories. 93,700 for years ago, the Crystalline Empire began forcibly converting organic life forms into their own kind. They conquered the Outer Rim in a matter of months. Again, reports of human intervention. The Empire was dismantled from within, their central command structures somehow infiltrated and destroyed. A third pause, longer this time. 147,216 years ago, the swarm emerged from dark space. They were similar to your modern Void Hunters, but far more numerous. They had already consumed 3 galaxy clusters before reaching ours. The attack was stopped by what historical records describe as the Ghost Fleet, ships that appeared from nowhere, fought with impossible coordination, then vanished without trace. The implications of Elder Ythera's testimony sent shock waves through the assembly. Humans had not only survived their supposed exodus from known space, they had been actively protecting galactic civilization for hundreds of thousands of years. Counselor Thexmol of the Scientific Consortium raised a tentacled appendage. "If this is true, where are they? Why don't we see them in normal space? Our deep space monitoring networks would detect any significant population centers." "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Krethan, his crystalline form chiming softly as he spoke, "they don't want to be detected." Director Vashti of Alliance Intelligence stepped forward. Her cybernetic implants flickered as she accessed classified databases. Following the revelations from the Kepler 442b footage, Intelligence has been conducting deep analysis of anomalous readings throughout Alliance space. "We've found patterns." The central display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of small red dots appeared scattered across known space, each pulsing slowly. "These are locations where our sensors have detected gravitational anomalies that don't match known celestial phenomena," Director Vashti explained. "Energy signatures that suggest advanced technology, but no visible sources. And communication patterns that operate on frequencies we don't use, in languages our computers cannot translate. She manipulated the display, highlighting specific regions. The density of these anomalies increases near major shipping lanes, important star systems, and the borders of potentially hostile territories. It's as if someone has been establishing monitoring posts throughout our space. Senator Glixera of the Merchant Republic leaned forward in her hoverchair. You're suggesting humans have built a network of hidden bases throughout Alliance territory? I'm suggesting they never left at all, Director Vashti replied. They simply became very good at hiding. The chamber erupted in dozens of simultaneous conversations as delegates processed this information. The comfortable assumptions that had guided galactic politics for millennia were crumbling. Admiral Thrello SA raised her hand for silence. There's more. Intelligence has been analyzing the communication patterns Director Vashti mentioned. We've managed to decode fragments of their transmissions. A new recording began playing through the chamber speakers. The voice was clearly human, speaking in the same calm tone they had heard from the warrior on Kepler 442b. Observation Post 17 to Central Command. Sector 7 Alpha remains stable. Alliance shipping proceeding normally. No sign of Void Hunter incursions. Recommend maintaining current monitoring protocols. Acknowledged 17. Be advised, we have indications of increased hegemony military activity near the neutral zone. All posts in sectors 6 through 9 are to heighten surveillance and report any aggressive movement. Understood, Command. Any word on the Kepler situation? Cleanup is proceeding as planned. Local forces performed admirably considering the circumstances. Marcus handled the prime contact well. The withdrawal should be complete within 2 standard days. Copy that. 17 out. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The casual efficiency of the conversation was somehow more unsettling than the dramatic footage from Kepler 442b. It suggested a vast, well-organized network operating throughout Alliance space with complete autonomy. Delegate Quarton of the Industrial Collective spoke up, his mechanical voice carrying artificial harmonics. They speak of us as if we are children under their protection. Local forces performed admirably considering the circumstances. The arrogance is staggering. Is it arrogance? Asked Elder Ythera thoughtfully. Or experience? By their own admission, they have been protecting this galaxy for hundreds of thousands of years. From their perspective, we are children. The philosophical implications of this statement created another wave of uncomfortable murmur through the assembly. Ambassador Lethos of the warrior clan stood abruptly, his 4 arms flexing with barely controlled aggression. This is intolerable. No species has the right to decide the fate of others, regardless of their power or age. If these humans truly exist, they must be confronted and forced to reveal themselves. And then what? Admiral Thrello SA asked quietly. We've seen what one human can accomplish against the Void Hunters. Do you really want to provoke an entire civilization of such beings? Before Ambassador Lethos could respond, Director Vashti stepped forward again. There's something else the Assembly needs to know. We've been monitoring increased activity in the anomalous readings over the past 72 hours. Communications traffic has tripled. Energy signatures are spiking. It's as if their entire network has gone to high alert. Why? Senator Glixera asked. We believe they know we know, Director Vashti replied. Our investigation into their activities has apparently been detected. They're responding to our discovery of their existence. The chamber fell silent once more. Every delegate was processing the same terrifying thought. If humans had been hiding for millennia, what would they do now that their secret was out? Counselor Thexmol's tentacles writhed nervously. Are we in danger? Do they consider our knowledge a threat? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. An unfamiliar signal was coming through on all frequencies, bypassing every security protocol the station possessed. Attention Galactic Alliance, a human voice said, broadcasting to every ship, station, and settlement in Alliance space. This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Protectorate. We understand you have questions. We're prepared to provide some answers. The voice was female, carrying the same calm authority they had heard in previous recordings. But there was something else in it now, a note of resignation, as if a long-anticipated moment had finally arrived. In 1 standard hour, A representative will dock at Station Prime. Do not attempt to scan our vessel. Do not attempt to board it without invitation. Do not attempt to follow it when it departs. Violation of any of these terms will result in immediate termination of this contact and a return to previous protocols. The transmission paused briefly before continuing. For the record, we had hoped to remain undetected for several more centuries. Your species are progressing faster than our models predicted. This is unexpected. Another pause, longer this time. 1 hour. Docking Bay 7. Come alone, Admiral Thrello SA. We have much to discuss. The transmission ended, leaving the entire assembly in shocked silence. Not only were humans real, not only had they been watching, but they were coming here. Now, Admiral Thrello SA's 4 eyes blinked in rapid sequence as she processed this development. Around her, delegates erupted in debate. Some called for military preparations. Others urged diplomatic caution. A few suggested immediate evacuation of the station. Silence, the Admiral commanded, her voice carrying enough authority to cut through the chaos. The decision has been made for us. In 57 minutes, we will have our first official contact with humanity in over 10,000 years. She turned to address the full assembly. Whatever happens in that docking bay may determine the future of galactic civilization. I want every sensor, every recorder, every piece of monitoring equipment focused on that meeting. If this goes badly, the galaxy needs to know what we learned here today. Director Vashti approached the Admiral's platform. What if this is a trap? What if they're planning to eliminate the leadership of the Alliance? Admiral Thrello SA considered this for a moment. Then, we die knowing the truth. But I don't think that's their intention. If they wanted us dead, we would be dead already. They've had thousands of years to accomplish that goal. She began walking toward the chamber's exit, her stride purposeful despite the uncertainty ahead. They called this a return to previous protocols. That suggests they're giving us a chance to handle this diplomatically. Let's not waste it. As the Admiral departed, delegates continued their heated discussions. Security teams scrambled to implement protective measures around Docking Bay 7. Science teams prepared every scanning device they could safely deploy without violating the humans' terms. In the depths of the station, automated systems registered the approach of an unknown vessel. It appeared on screens as little more than a shadow, defying attempts at detailed analysis. The ship's design was unlike anything in Alliance databases, sleek, organic curves that seemed to flow like water, yet clearly composed of materials that bent light around them. The vessel moved with impossible grace, sliding through the station's defensive perimeters as if they didn't exist. It docked at Bay 7 with precision that suggested intimate knowledge of Alliance station design. Admiral Thrello SA stood before the airlock, her ceremonial robes rustling with nervous energy. Behind her, a carefully selected team of diplomats, scientists, and security personnel waited at a respectful distance. The airlock cycled. The door opened. And humanity stepped back into galactic politics after 10,000 years of silence. The figure that emerged was not what anyone had expected. No ancient warrior or advanced being enhanced by millennia of technological evolution. Instead, a woman appeared, average height by human standards, wearing what appeared to be a simple uniform bearing no insignia or rank markers. Her features were pleasant but unremarkable, and she moved with casual confidence rather than military bearing. She looked exactly like the humans in historical records, as if the intervening millennia had changed nothing fundamental about their species. Admiral Thrello SA, Commander Chen said, extending her hand in the ancient human gesture of greeting. Thank you for accepting our invitation. We have a great deal to discuss. As the Admiral reached out to accept the handshake, she couldn't help but wonder, what did you do with 10,000 years? The answer, she suspected, was about to change everything. Admiral Thrello SA clasped Commander Chen's offered hand, noting the surprisingly firm grip and warmth of human skin. For a moment, the two leaders studied each other across the vast gulf of species and history. Shall we sit? Commander Chen suggested, gesturing toward a small conference area that had been hastily prepared in Docking Bay 7. This conversation has been a long time coming. They settled into chairs designed for humanoid physiology, though the Admiral noticed Chen seemed completely comfortable despite the furniture being sized for larger beings. Everything about the humans suggested adaptability and preparation. I have to ask, Admiral Thrello began, why now? Why reveal yourselves after so long? Commander Chin smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both warm and sad. Because you're growing up faster than we anticipated. Your technology, your political structures, your understanding of the galaxy. It's all advancing at an exponential rate. We calculated you had at least 3 more centuries before you'd be capable of detecting our monitoring networks. She paused, looking out through the bay's viewing port at the stars beyond. Frankly, we're impressed. And a little concerned. Concerned about what? About whether you're ready for what's coming. Chin replied. The void hunters you encountered on Kepler 442b? They're nothing compared to what's stirring in the deep dark. We've been preparing for it for millennia, but we always planned to handle it ourselves. Now we're not sure that's possible anymore. The Admiral felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. What do you mean? What's coming? Commander Chin activated a small device she had been carrying. A holographic display materialized between them, showing what appeared to be a map of local galactic clusters. Red indicators marked familiar threats, like void hunter territories. But, at the edge of the display, something else was highlighted in deep purple, a massive region that seemed to be moving. The Devourer Swarm, Chin explained. They're what's left of the civilization that originally drove us from this galaxy 10,000 years ago. We've been tracking their movement through dark space ever since. They're coming back. Admiral Thrello stared at the display in growing horror. The purple region was enormous, easily 10 times the size of known Alliance space. How long do we have? By our estimates, they'll reach the outer edges of this galaxy in approximately 50 standard years. They move slowly, but they're thorough. Every star system, every planet, every form of life they encounter gets processed into their collective mass. The Admiral's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as she processed this information. 50 years. That's not much time to prepare for something like this. It's more time than we had originally, Chin replied. When we first detected their approach vector, we calculated they would arrive during the early development of your current civilizations. We've been working to accelerate your technological and political advancement ever since. Working to accelerate. The Admiral trailed off as implications became clear. You've been manipulating our development. Guiding, Chin corrected firmly. Never manipulating. We don't change your choices or force specific outcomes. But we do occasionally remove obstacles that would slow your progress or eliminate threats that would set you back significantly. She gestured at the holographic display, which shifted to show historical timelines. Every aggressive species that was mysteriously stopped, every plague that ended suddenly, every war that concluded unexpectedly, we were protecting your civilization's ability to develop naturally. Admiral Thrello leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by the scope of what she was learning. How many of you are there? How large is your civilization now? Commander Chin's expression became guarded. That's classified information, Admiral. But I can tell you we're not the same species we were 10,000 years ago. Exile has a way of changing a people. Before the Admiral could ask for clarification, the docking bay's communication system activated. Director Vashti's voice came through clearly. Admiral, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the sector. Ships are appearing on long-range sensors. Hundreds of them. Chun touched her device again, and the holographic display shifted to show real-time sensor data from around Station Prime. The Admiral gasped. Ships were indeed appearing, not emerging from hyperspace or warp, but simply materializing as if they had been invisible moments before. My people are understandably nervous about this meeting, Chin explained calmly. We've positioned a small escort fleet nearby, for everyone's protection. Small. Admiral Thrello stared at the sensor readings. There were over 300 vessels of unknown design surrounding the station. This is your idea of small? Admiral, Chun said seriously, you need to understand something. The civilization you've been watching over this galaxy is not our full strength. It's not even a significant fraction of our capabilities. We've been using the minimum force necessary to maintain stability. The human stood and walked to the viewing port, her silhouette outlined against the stars. When we were exiled, we had a choice. We could accept defeat and find some distant corner of the universe to hide in, or we could use our exile as an opportunity to grow stronger. We chose growth. She turned back to face the Admiral. 10,000 years is a long time, Admiral. Especially when you're preparing for war. Admiral Thrello joined her at the viewing port. In the distance, she could see some of the human vessels, sleek shapes that seemed to blend with space itself. They were beautiful in an alien way, unlike anything produced by Alliance technology. What do you want from us? The Admiral asked. Partnership, Chen replied immediately. The Devourer swarm isn't something any single species can handle alone. Not even us. We need allies. We need the combined industrial capacity, scientific knowledge, and military strength of every civilized species in the galaxy. And if we refuse? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then, we'll do what we've always done. We'll protect you whether you want our protection or not. But our chances of success drop significantly without active cooperation. The Admiral turned to study the human's profile. You really care about us, don't you? About all the younger species. Yes, Chen said simply. Your people remind us of who we used to be. Your optimism, your diversity, your willingness to work together despite your differences. These are qualities humanity lost during our exile. Watching you grow has been inspiring. She paused, her expression becoming distant. We became very good at war, Admiral. Very good at hiding, fighting, surviving. But we lost much of what made us worth saving in the first place. Your civilizations have kept those qualities alive. Admiral Thrello felt an unexpected surge of empathy for this ancient species that had sacrificed so much to protect others. What would partnership look like? Commander Chen activated her device again. The holographic display showed detailed technical specifications for technologies beyond anything the Alliance had imagined. Shared knowledge, she said. We'll provide you with defensive technologies, manufacturing techniques, strategic intelligence. In return, we need access to your industrial infrastructure, your genetic diversity, and your creative thinking. Humans have become very good at solving old problems. We're not as good at thinking of new solutions. The display shifted to show ship designs that incorporated both human and Alliance technologies. The resulting vessels looked like nothing either civilization could have produced independently. We're proposing a true merger of capabilities, Chen continued. Not human technology with Alliance crews, or Alliance ships with human advisors. Something entirely new. Something neither of us could achieve alone. Admiral Thrello studied the specifications with growing excitement and fear. The technologies being offered would advance Alliance capabilities by centuries in just a few years. But they would also fundamentally change the nature of their civilizations. There would be conditions, she said. Of course, we would need to maintain operational security regarding our true capabilities and locations. We would need guarantees that these technologies won't be used against member species. And we would need Alliance agreement to follow our strategic guidance in preparing for the swarm. The Admiral nodded slowly. These decisions are beyond my authority. They would need to be approved by the full council. We understand. How long will you need? Before Admiral Thrello could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Director Vashti's voice came through the communication system again, this time strained with urgency. Admiral, we're receiving distress signals from the Kepler system. Multiple Void Hunter fleets are converging on Alliance colonies. Initial reports suggest they're not following their usual patterns. They seem to be searching for something. Commander Chen's expression darkened. They're looking for Marcus. The human from your footage? Yes. Word of his intervention has spread through their command structure. They know we're still here now, and they're panicking. Desperate creatures do desperate things. Chen touched her device again, and, suddenly, her voice was being broadcast on all frequencies. All Protectorate units, this is command. The Kepler situation has escalated. Implement Protocol 7 immediately. Full disclosure is authorized. She turned to Admiral Thrello. I'm afraid our diplomatic timeline just accelerated significantly. Those Void Hunter fleets aren't just searching for one human. They're trying to force us into the open by threatening Alliance civilians. What's Protocol 7? Commander Chen's smile was grim. Something we hoped we wouldn't need to use for another 50 years. You wanted to see our true capabilities, Admiral? You're about to get a demonstration. The viewing port suddenly filled with light as human vessels throughout the sector dropped their cloaking systems. What had appeared to be 300 ships revealed itself to be over 3,000. And these were just the ones in immediate proximity to Station Prime. "Admiral," Chen said, her voice now carrying the weight of command authority, "I suggest you contact your council immediately. In approximately 6 hours, the galaxy is going to witness the largest space battle in recorded history. After that, there won't be any secrets left to keep." She began walking back toward her ship. "We'll need your answer about partnership within 48 hours. Either we face the coming darkness together, or we do it knowing we tried." Admiral Relentless watched the human commander disappear into her vessel. As the airlock closed behind Chun, she realized that everything had just changed. The comfortable illusions of the past were gone forever. Outside, human ships were already beginning to move toward the Kepler system, their formations precise and purposeful. They moved like a single organism, coordinated beyond anything the Alliance had ever achieved. The Admiral activated her communication device. "This is Admiral Relentless to Alliance Command. Emergency session of the full Council required immediately. Priority Alpha clearance. We are no longer alone in this galaxy, and we are no longer the most powerful civilization in it." As she spoke, she watched Commander Chen's ship depart with the same impossible grace it had displayed on arrival. But now she knew it was not alone. Somewhere in the darkness, an ancient species was preparing to defend civilizations that had never known they needed defending. The question was whether those civilizations were ready to defend themselves. In a few hours, they would all find out. The emergency council session convened in record time. Representatives arrived via emergency transport from across Alliance space, their faces grave with the knowledge that the galaxy had fundamentally changed in a single day. The Grand Assembly buzzed with nervous energy as delegates took their positions. Admiral Relentless stood before the gathered representatives, her 4 eyes reflecting the weight of responsibility. "Honored delegates, 6 hours ago, humanity revealed itself to us. 3 hours ago, they engaged the largest Void Hunter fleet ever assembled in what can only be described as a demonstration of power." She activated the central display, showing real-time footage from the Kepler system. The scene was beyond anything the delegates had imagined possible. The Void Hunter fleet numbered in the thousands. Their massive biomechanical ships filled space like a plague of insects, each one capable of devastating a planetary defense force single-handedly. They had positioned themselves around 3 Alliance colonies, holding millions of civilians hostage while they demanded the surrender of the human warriors. Then, the human fleet arrived. Unlike the chaotic swarm of Void Hunter vessels, the human ships moved in perfect formation. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb light, making them appear as moving shadows against the starfield. They emerged from what appeared to be empty space, materializing in groups of 50 or 100 at precise coordinates. "Audio intercept from the engagement," Admiral Relentless announced. Commander Chen's voice filled the chamber. "Attention, Void Hunter fleet. You have violated the Kepler Accords by threatening civilian populations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Void Hunter response came in their harsh, metallic language. "Surrender the human operatives who have infiltrated our territories. These soft-flesh populations will suffer until compliance is achieved. Negative. Final warning, withdraw or be removed." What happened next defied conventional understanding of space warfare. The human fleet didn't charge forward or launch massive volleys of weapons. Instead, they simply stopped. Every ship in their formation went perfectly still, as if waiting for something. The Void Hunters, interpreting this as hesitation, began their attack. Thousands of bioplasma weapons discharged simultaneously, filling space with deadly energy. The barrage would have annihilated any Alliance fleet. It struck the human ships and simply disappeared. "Energy absorption systems," Director Vashti whispered from her position in the chamber. "They're not using shields to deflect the attacks. They're absorbing the energy completely." The Void Hunter fleet fired again, pouring more power into their assault. The result was the same. Every beam, every plasma bolt, every exotic energy weapon in their arsenal was absorbed without apparent effect. Then, the humans responded. They didn't fire back in the conventional sense. Instead, each human ship began to glow with absorbed energy, building to a brilliant crescendo. When they finally, released that stored power, it wasn't as crude energy beams or explosive warheads. It was as pure force. The effect was surgical and devastating. Void Hunter ships simply stopped functioning. Their weapons went silent, their engines died, their command systems failed. One by one, the massive vessels went dark and began drifting helplessly through space. "They're not destroying them," observed Counselor Thexmol, his tentacles writhing with confusion. "They're disabling them." The human fleet began moving again, but not toward the disabled Void Hunter vessels. Instead, they took positions around the threatened Alliance colonies, forming protective barriers that made it clear the civilians were under human protection. Commander Chin's voice came through the intercept again, but this time she wasn't speaking to the Void Hunters. "Alliance colonial commanders, this is Protectorate Command. Your populations are secure. Please maintain current positions while we complete our operations." "Complete operations?" muttered Senator Glixera. "What operations?" Their answer came as the space around the disabled Void Hunter ships began to shimmer. New vessels were appearing, not human ships, but something else entirely. These newcomers were sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to be grown rather than built. "Those are our medical and technical teams," Commander Chin's voice explained, as if she had heard the questions being asked light years away. "We're going to repair the Void Hunter ships and send them home." The chamber erupted in stunned silence. Repair them? Over the next hour, the footage showed human technical teams boarding the disabled Void Hunter vessels. They worked with impossible efficiency, fixing damaged systems and restoring power. But they weren't just repairing, they were also installing something. "Compliance monitors," Commander Chin's voice continued. "Non-removable systems that will prevent these vessels from engaging in aggressive actions against civilian populations. They'll be able to defend themselves, but they won't be able to attack others." As the repairs concluded, the Void Hunter ships began powering up again. Their crews, apparently unharmed but thoroughly chastened, found themselves in possession of fully functional vessels that would no longer obey orders to attack non-combatants. "This concludes our intervention in the Kepler situation," Chen announced. "Void Hunter vessels will now return to their territories. Any attempt to remove the compliance systems will result in complete shutdown of all ship functions." The massive alien fleet began its retreat, moving with none of the aggressive confidence they had displayed upon arrival. As they departed, human ships began disappearing again, fading back into invisibility as if they had never been there. The footage ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Elder Yathera was the first to speak, her ancient voice carrying a note of wonder. They could have destroyed that entire fleet in minutes. Instead, they chose to heal it. Ambassador Krethan's crystalline form chimed softly. "This is not the behavior of a species focused purely on warfare. Despite their capabilities, they still value life." President Mordax leaned forward in his chair. "The implications for galactic commerce alone are staggering. If humans can disable any ship, any fleet, any defense system, then the entire balance of power has shifted." "More than shifted," Admiral Thrello replied. "It's been completely redefined. But that's not the most important revelation here." She changed the display to show technical analysis of the human intervention. "Our science teams have been studying the engagement data. The energy absorption technology alone represents advancement beyond our theoretical frameworks. But it's not just their technology that's impressive, it's their restraint." Director Vashti stepped forward. "Intelligence analysis confirms that the human fleet could have sterilized the entire Kepler system in minutes. Instead, they chose the most complex solution possible, one that preserved every life while permanently changing the nature of the threat." "They think differently than we do," observed Delegate Corton. "Their first instinct isn't destruction or subjugation. It's transformation." Admiral Thrello nodded. "Which brings us to their proposal. They want partnership, not dominance. They want to prepare us for something called the Devourer Swarm." The display shifted again, showing the intelligence data Commander Chun had shared about the approaching threat. The purple region on the galactic map had grown noticeably larger since the first briefing. "Our long-range sensors have confirmed the existence of this approaching mass," Director Vashti reported. "It's beyond anything in our experience." The gravitational distortions alone suggest a collection of matter equivalent to thousands of star systems. Counselor Vextar raised a clawed hand. What exactly are they proposing we do about it? Admiral Threll OSA activated another section of the display. Complete integration of our civilizations. Shared technology, joint manufacturing, combined fleets. They're offering to transform every Alliance world into a fortress capable of defending itself. The technical specifications Chun had shared were displayed for all to see. Delegates gasped as they realized the scope of what was being offered. Planetary defense systems that could repel invasion fleets. Ship designs that incorporated the best of human and Alliance innovations. Manufacturing techniques that could produce resources at unprecedented scales. The costs would be enormous, Senator Glixera pointed out. This level of industrial transformation would bankrupt half our economies. Humans are offering to provide the initial investment, Admiral Threll OSA replied. Raw materials, manufacturing equipment, technical expertise. They claim to have resource reserves that make our concerns irrelevant. What do they want in return? Asked Ambassador Lethos suspiciously. Cooperation, integration, and, most importantly, innovation. The Admiral paused. They've admitted that their civilization has become highly specialized for warfare and survival. They've lost much of their creative and cultural diversity. They need us to provide something they can no longer generate themselves, new ideas. Elder Ythera accessed deeper memories. There are precedents for this in ancient history. Civilizations that grew too focused on single purposes often sought renewal through contact with younger species. The results were variable. What kinds of results? President Mordax asked. Sometimes mutual enrichment. Sometimes cultural assimilation. Sometimes the destruction of one or both civilizations. Elder Ythera's voice carried the weight of millennia. The outcome typically depended on whether the partnership was truly equal or merely appeared equal. Director Vashti projected new data. We've been analyzing the human communication networks we can detect. Their civilization shows signs of extreme centralization and efficiency, but little cultural variation. They appear to have sacrificed individual expression for collective capability. Are you suggesting they want to use us to regain their lost humanity? Counselor Thexmol asked. I'm suggesting, Admiral Threll OSA replied carefully, that their motivations may be more complex than simple military alliance. They need us to survive the coming threat. But they also need us to remember why survival is worth pursuing. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this possibility. The idea that humanity sought renewal through contact with younger species added new dimensions to their proposal. Ambassador Krethans form-chimed thoughtfully. If this is true, then we have more leverage than we initially realized. They need us as much as we need them. Perhaps, Admiral Threll OSA agreed. But we also have less time than we'd prefer. Commander Chin gave us 48 hours to provide an answer. That deadline is now 36 hours away. President Mordax stood abruptly. This decision will affect every citizen of every member world. We cannot make it in isolation. Agreed, Admiral Threll OSA replied. Emergency referendums are being prepared for all member civilizations. Citizens will vote on whether to accept human partnership within 32 standard hours. And if the vote is no? Senator Glixera asked. Admiral Threll OSA was quiet for a long moment. Then, we face the Devourer's swarm alone, and hope that humanity's promise to protect us whether we want protection or not is sufficient. As delegates began preparing to return to their home worlds for the most important vote in galactic history, none of them noticed the small monitoring device that had been discreetly placed in the chamber's power systems. It transmitted everything they said to a receiver located in deep space, where Commander Chun and her staff analyzed every word. They're frightened, observed Lieutenant Torres, Chin's intelligence officer. As they should be, Chin replied. We're asking them to fundamentally change the nature of their civilization in less than 2 days. What if they refuse? Commander Chin studied the long-range sensor data showing the approaching Devourer swarm. Its estimated time of arrival had just shifted forward by another 5 years. Then, we implement the contingency protocols, she said quietly, and hope they forgive us afterward. In the depths of space, ancient machines that had been dormant for millennia began powering up. Humanity had hoped for willing partnership in the coming war. But they had prepared for other possibilities as well. 28 hours after the emergency council session, the votes began coming in from across Alliance space. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings cast their decisions on whether to accept humanity's offer of partnership. The process was chaotic, rushed, and fraught with uncertainty, but it was democracy in its purest form. Admiral Threll OSA monitored the results from the command center aboard Station Prime. The early returns were mixed. Some civilizations voted overwhelmingly in favor of partnership, while others showed deep skepticism about trusting an ancient species that had hidden among them for millennia. Current tally shows 57% in favor, reported Director Vashti. But the margins are thin in several key systems. Time remaining? Admiral Threll OSA asked. 4 hours until the deadline. 17 systems still haven't reported final results. The Admiral nodded, trying to project calm despite the tension that filled the command center. Outside the viewing ports, space appeared empty, but she knew human vessels were positioned throughout the sector, waiting for the Alliance's answer. Admiral, Communications Officer Lythani called out. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian Commonwealth. Ambassador Krethan requests immediate conference. The main display activated to show Ambassador Krethan's crystalline form, but something was different. His usual rainbow refractions had taken on a distinctly blue tint, indicating deep concern among his species. Admiral, Krethan began without preamble. Our historical archives have uncovered something significant. References to the original human exodus 10,000 years ago. The records suggest it wasn't entirely voluntary. Admiral Threll OSA leaned forward. Explain. Ancient treaties speak of the separation as a negotiated solution to prevent galactic war. Humans possess technology that threatened the existing balance of power. Rather than face conquest or annihilation, the other major civilizations of that era agreed to territorial division. The implications sent a chill through the command center. You're saying humanity was forced into exile? Forced is perhaps too strong a word. But the alternative was apparently mutual destruction. Humans agreed to withdraw to ungoverned space in exchange for guarantees that younger civilizations would be allowed to develop without interference. Director Vashti turned from her monitoring station. That would explain their protective behavior toward us. They've been honoring an ancient agreement to safeguard species that couldn't defend themselves. It would also explain their current proposal, Admiral Threll OSA realized. The approaching Devourer swarm threatens the entire galaxy. The old agreements become irrelevant when everything is at risk. Ambassador Krethan's form chimed urgently. There's more, Admiral. The archives mention something called the Final Protocol. If humanity ever returned to known space, it would mean the ancient threat that originally drove the separation had returned as well. Before Admiral Threll OSA could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Long-range sensors were detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Report, the Admiral commanded. Ships incoming, announced sensor technician Vreldan. Massive signatures, unknown configuration. They're not human designs. The main display shifted to show sensor data from the approaching vessels. What they saw defied immediate comprehension. The ships were enormous, each one easily the size of a space station. They moved in precise formation, their dark hulls reflecting no light whatsoever. Are those the Devourer swarm? Director Vashti asked. Negative, Vreldan replied. Energy signatures don't match previous data, but they're big enough to be considered capital ships by any standard. Admiral Threll OSA opened communications to all Alliance channels. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Threll OSA of the Galactic Alliance. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came immediately, broadcast on all frequencies with power that overwhelmed the station's receivers. The voice was deep, mechanical, and carried the weight of absolute authority. This is Hegemon Prime of the Dominion Fleet. We have come to reclaim territories illegally occupied by inferior species. Surrender will be accepted. Resistance will be crushed. The command center fell silent as the implications became clear. These weren't the Devourer swarm. This was something else entirely, another threat that had chosen this moment to reveal itself. Admiral, Communications Officer Lythani called out. We're receiving a transmission from Commander Chun. The human's voice came through with crystal clarity. Admiral Thrello SA, are you seeing this? We see it, Commander. What are we dealing with? The hegemony. They're the descendants of the civilization that originally forced the separation 10,000 years ago. They've been expanding into distant space ever since, consuming everything in their path. We didn't expect them to return so soon. Admiral Thrello SA felt the pieces clicking into place. This is why you really came back. Not just the Devourer swarm. You knew the hegemony would return. We suspected. Our monitoring stations detected signs of their approach 6 months ago. The Void Hunter behavior, their increased aggression, they were running from something. Now we know what. On the main display, the hegemony fleet was taking positions throughout the system. Their ships were beautiful in a terrible way, all flowing curves and predatory grace. They moved like hunting animals positioning themselves around prey. How many ships? Admiral Thrello SA asked. Current count shows 237 capital ships, reported Vreldan. Energy signatures suggest each one is capable of planetary bombardment. Director Vashti turned from her analysis station. Admiral, at those power levels, they could sterilize every inhabited world in this system within hours. Commander Chun, Admiral Thrello SA called out. What are our options? Honestly, limited. The hegemony is why humans developed our current capabilities in the first place. They're the reason we became so focused on warfare and survival. They're also the reason we've been preparing the galaxy for defense. The Admiral closed her eyes, processing the magnitude of the situation. The vote. Do we still have time? Admiral, Director Vashti announced. Final tallies are coming in. The results are. She paused, checking her data. 63% in favor of partnership. The measure has passed. Hegemon Prime to Alliance Station, the mechanical voice announced. You have 30 standard minutes to begin evacuation procedures. This system will be cleansed and prepared for proper occupation. Admiral Thrello SA activated the General Communication System. Commander Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Alliance, I formally accept your offer of partnership. What do you need from us? Time to get our people into position. Can you delay their assault? How do you delay something like that? By being yourself, Admiral. Diplomacy has always been humanity's weakness. It's always been your strength. Admiral Thrello SA straightened her shoulders and activated the system-wide broadcast channel. Hegemon Prime, this is Admiral Thrello SA speaking for the Galactic Alliance. We request formal parley before any hostile action is taken. The response was immediate and dismissive. Inferior species do not negotiate with their superiors. You will comply with evacuation orders or be removed. We invoke ancient right of challenge, the Admiral continued, drawing on diplomatic protocols that predated current galactic civilization. Single combat to determine territorial rights. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute. When Hegemon Prime finally responded, there was surprise in the mechanical voice. You know of the old ways? We honor the old ways. Admiral Thrello SA replied firmly. Do you? Another pause. Choose your champion. One combat. Winner takes the system. You have 1 hour to prepare. The communication ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Admiral, Director Vashti whispered, what have you done? We don't have anyone who could possibly face a hegemony champion in single combat. No, Admiral Thrello SA agreed. But our new partners do. Commander Chen's voice came through immediately. Admiral, that was brilliantly done. You just bought us exactly the time we needed. Do you have someone who can face their champion? Oh yes. We've been preparing for this fight for 10,000 years. The hour passed quickly. Alliance ships evacuated non-combatants from the area while the hegemony fleet maintained its threatening positions. As the deadline approached, 2 vessels moved forward from their respective fleets, 1 massive hegemony ship and 1 small human craft. Admiral Thrello SA watched from Station Prime as the combatants took their positions in the space between the fleets. The hegemony champion was exactly what she had expected, a massive, heavily armed warrior in powered armor that made it appear more machine than biological entity. The human champion was Marcus, the same warrior they had seen in the original footage from Kepler 442b. He wore simple armor and carried weapons that looked primitive compared to the hegemony's advanced technology. This is madness, Director Vashti muttered. He'll be destroyed in seconds. Will he? Admiral Thrello SA asked softly. The combat began with the hegemony champion unleashing every weapon in its arsenal. Energy beams that could pierce starship hulls, explosive projectiles that could level buildings, exotic weapons that could disrupt matter at the molecular level. Marcus simply stood in space, absorbing every attack just as the human fleet had absorbed Void Hunter weapons. But, this time, something different happened. Instead of storing the energy for later release, he seemed to be converting it into something else entirely. The hegemony champion's attacks grew more desperate as it realized its weapons were having no effect. It deployed close combat systems, extending molecular sharp blades, and gravity manipulators designed to tear enemies apart. Marcus moved. He didn't fight the way Alliance warriors fought, with tactical precision and calculated strikes. He didn't fight the way the hegemony champion fought, with overwhelming technology and brute force. He fought like water flowing around obstacles, like wind wearing away mountains, like time itself, inevitable, patient, and utterly unstoppable. Within minutes, the hegemony champion's systems began failing, not from damage, but from some form of interference that shut down its technology piece by piece. The massive warrior found itself helpless, floating in space with no functional weapons or defenses. Marcus approached slowly, his movements gentle despite the violence that had just occurred. He reached out and touched the champion's armored helmet. It's over, his voice came through on all frequencies. You've lost. Honor the agreement. The hegemony champion's voice was filled with disbelief. How? How are you still alive? How are you still here? Marcus removed his own helmet, revealing a human face that looked exactly like those in 10,000-year-old records. Unchanged. Uniged. Because, he said simply, this is our home. And we protect our home. Admiral Thrello SA gasped as understanding finally dawned. The humans hadn't just survived their exile. They had thrived, evolved, and become something beyond what they had been before. They weren't just protecting the galaxy from external threats. They were the galaxy's immune system. Hegemon Prime, Marcus called out. Your champion has fallen honorably. Will you honor the terms of combat? The mechanical voice that responded was filled with something Admiral Thrello SA had never heard from the hegemony before: respect. The terms are honored. This system remains under Alliance protection. We withdraw. As the massive hegemony fleet began its departure, Marcus floated alone in space for a moment before returning to his ship. His voice came through one final time, but now it was addressed to Admiral Thrello SA. Welcome to the real galaxy, Admiral. It's more dangerous than you knew, but also more wonderful. We have a lot of work to do. Admiral Thrello SA smiled as she watched human ships begin materializing throughout the system. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. The true scope of their civilization was finally being revealed. Commander Chun, she called out. When do we begin? Right now, came the reply. The Devourer swarm is still coming, and the hegemony will be back with reinforcements. But today, for the first time in 10,000 years, humanity doesn't stand alone. As Station Prime began receiving technical specifications for technologies that would transform Alliance civilization, Admiral Thrello SA realized she was witnessing the beginning of a new era. The age of young species stumbling through the galaxy alone was ending. The age of true galactic civilization was about to begin. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient enemies that had thought themselves invincible were learning that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their tactics. It had been their refusal to let anyone face the dark alone.